Flat tires suck. Yeah, flat tires suck. Back. Thank you for watching. I am Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and I'm currently ranking all Frank Zappa albums released during his lifetime. Started at number 1, and we are currently in number 16, which is Studio Tan. There's a lot to say about this album. You could go into a rabbit hole for a long time analyzing some of the songs on this album, the musicians, the history, the backstory. A lot is going on with Studio Tan. Couple things to start with before I get into the actual songs. One, if you want to get in the comments below and berate me for ranking this as high as 16 or as low as 16, I'm never confused as to whether closer to 1 is higher or closer to 1 is lower. But if you want to berate me that this is 16 and not like 10 or 8 or 11 or anywhere closer to number 1, you can do so. Like I had Greggery Peccary, which is one of the songs of this album, which is like the 20-minute song, which takes up all of side A. That song was in my top 10, yet somehow this album fell to number 16, even though half of it is top 10 worthy. But then when I look at what I have 1 through 15, I'm like, what do I take out of 1 through 15 to move this up? So basically we're at that point where we're at number 16 and we're still dealing with albums which are almost perfect, and which, if any other artist had released them, it may be their best album, if not easily one of their top 5 albums. That's how phenomenal I have found this album in recent listens, prior to making this video in the past couple of days, where I'm like, what am I doing? How did this fall all the way to 16? So if you think it should be higher and want to complain about it, please do so. I would agree with you. On a different day, a different week, a different year, this might be higher. Though I don't know what it would replace is the problem. The other thing I want to say about this album is it was originally part of a much larger Zappa release that he was planning to release called Lather, spelled L-A-T-H-E-R, because it's Frank. This was a massive release that included all the tracks from Studio Tan. It included tracks that would eventually go on to form orchestral favorites. It included tracks that would be found on Sleep Dirt, and it included tracks that would be found on Zappa in New York. It was this massive thing that Frank had planned to release, which really was a well laid out, well sequenced balance of his instrumental stuff, his live funny stuff, his like guitar hero stuff, his like instrumental compositions, his random studio tinkering with, you know, musicians making random noises, excerpts of guitar solos. It was an almost perfect album. That album, Lather, did get released in '96 after Frank passed away. But at the time, Warner Brothers did not want him to release it, and so there was a whole history of contractual disputes and obligations and blah, 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 and it eventually got released as those 4 separate albums that I named earlier, with Frank then going on air and playing portions of it, if not, I think the entire thing, on the radio, saying, hey people, just take this, I'm giving it to you. Get your cassettes now, record this. Like literally just giving it away because he was, you know, tired of Warner Brothers. And if you've listened to any live shows, Frank in like the late 70s, he takes quite opportunities to berate and insult and attack Warner Brothers. So yeah, he was not a fan of that. So Studio Tan is one of those albums, and all 4 of these songs were going to be included on Lather. The other releases either had alternate takes or, you know, different versions of songs that eventually made it on. This one, all 4 of these were there, though I think the Greggery Peccary is a slightly longer version on the Lather release, if I'm not mistaken. But this is 4 songs. All of side A is a song called The Adventures of Greggery Peccary. And this song is just, I think, one of the most accomplished pieces Frank has done in his entire career. It is a difficult piece to listen to. It is not one of those you put on in the background and you just kind of like do other things while it's in the background. I mean, you could do that, but it's hard to do that, and you won't get out of it what you should get out of it, because it's one of those pieces like, you know, I think I first got this album when it was released on CD, so that would have been the early 90s. And still, you know, this week when I'm listening to it, like I'm like, oh yeah, that part and that part, and you're catching little things you might not have heard before. And it is a great headphones experience if that's the way you like to listen to music. So what it essentially is there's a lot of like narration, sort of talking, singing in it. Frank is telling the story of this pig, Greggery Peckery. He's got a job. He works in an advertising company called Big Swifty. He invents the calendar. Some henchmen don't want him to invent the calendar, so they chase him. There's a philosopher that comes in at the end. Billy the Mountain makes an appearance and makes some new brown clouds. There's a lot of narration telling the story. But in between these sort of segments of narration, there are these musical interludes that go anywhere from like 30 seconds to like almost close to 2 minutes, maybe over 2 minutes, that are these really dense, complex, just really classical Stravinsky-esque sort of compositions that kind of link all the different chapters together. You know, sometimes they feature George Duke, sometimes it's percussion heavy. You know, the Fowlers on horns are on this album. You know, so there's each one has a kind of a different flavor to it, a different style, and they provide sort of the continuity between all the different pieces. And it's just a fun listen once you sort of get used to the idea of this is what is going to happen. Frank's going to talk, sing. There's going to be some crazy music going on. There's going to be a great musical interlude. Frank's going to do some more talk singing. There are parts in this which kind of show Frank kind of flexing his band's muscles. Towards the end of the song, we get to one of those sort of, if you've heard Tinseltown Rebellion, the song, there's moments in that song where Frank references like all the bands that play on the Sunset Strip, and he goes, there's punk bands, and then they play a little punk riff. There's disco bands, and they play a disco riff. There's a segment like that in here where Frank references all these things, and the band plays little snippets of like that kind of musical style or specific songs or anything, kind of swinging back and forth through all these different genres. You know, there's a lot of muscle flexing going on in this. There's a lot of conceptual continuity clues. Big Swifty is mentioned. New Brown Clouds is mentioned. This was originally composed back in 1972, so there's a lot of those same musical themes that were there. This was performed by the Grand Wazoo Band, I think the bigger of the two bands, and you can find that on the Wazoo release. Pretty sure that's the one it was. But yeah, just a phenomenal listen. But it's a taxing listen, and it's a tiring listen. And it's one of those where you feel like you've actually accomplished something when you're done, like you're proud to have sat through the whole thing. So after that, side B, which actually I think works better on a CD because you don't have to turn it over, you get to go right into the next track. The next track is like a 2.5-minute song called Let Me Take You to the Beach. Wah, 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 wah. It's one of those like homage songs to like late 50s, early 60s beach movies. And because it's Frank, it's got its tongue in its cheek and it's satirical while at the same time being completely true to the musical form. So like you understand that he's sort of in a way mocking these kind of like, yeah, we're twisting on the beach type things. But at the same time, you could see this in an actual movie because it's like that legitimate of a song. So that opens up side 2, immediately follows Greggery Peckery on the CD, and it's almost like cotton candy after eating vegetables for like 25 minutes. You know, vegetables that make you stronger, nonetheless, you still want a little bit of dessert. After that comes revised music for for guitar and low budget orchestra. Not good with names, I am not. And this to me sounds like Greggery Peckery was originally a 40-minute song. And Frank realized that was way too long, so he took out the latter half, but he still had all these musical interludes, you know, just like in Greggery Peckery. So instead of abandoning those musical interludes altogether, he just put them like back to back and made like a 7.5-minute instrumental song. That's what this song feels like to me. Because all the musical interludes are highly engaging. There's even like a guitar solo that sounds like there's a good, healthy section towards the end where it sounds like Frank played a guitar solo and then had probably, I think it's Bruce Fowler, maybe Walt, but definitely one of the Fowler brothers, like transcribe that solo and then play it over his solo. So it's like a double-tracked horn and guitar solo. Sounds absolutely amazing. But this is one of those tracks that, again, it's Frank's more quote-unquote difficult instrumental music, but coming after Greggery Peckery with that little interlude of Let Me Take You to the Beach, it seems just a lot more digestible because you're like, oh, we're back to this kind of style, but I get this. I understand this. You know, this is something I can relate to. It connects back to the Greggery Peccary experience. And then the last song is Redunzel, which kind of made its name in 73 and 74. You know, it features Ruth Underwood. There's a really prominent Ruth Underwood solo in the very beginning of this. There's a Frank Zappa guitar solo. Again, this is one of those songs that all those different instrumental parts with solos in between. Frank Zappa gets to shine. George Duke gets his own little solo at the end. It's got these highly intricate written parts, very similar to what you would hear in like any 73 or 74 live release. You know, lots of percussion, you know, Ruth Underwood driving it, the Fowler on bass, just keeping things together tight. Just a great song with a phenomenal guitar solo. Like, it is the only real like Frank soloing solo on this album. You know, if we don't count that strange little double, you know, transcribed one in Low Budget. I mean, it's just one of the greatest solos. It's just phenomenal. You know, you need the album to hear the solo because it's, again, Frank creating something that was a one-time only affair, but it's worth listening to over and over and over again just because of the crazy compositional qualities of his improvisation. So, yeah, a wonderful album. Like, the fact that it's all the way down to 16 just blows my mind because any other artist, this should be much higher up than that. Yeah, that's it, man. Check it out. Enjoy it. It is worth going back and listening to over and over and over again. And again, if you get into Greggery Peccary, there is so much. I could easily do an entire 25-minute video on just Greggery Peccary and all the allusions and the references and the history and all that stuff. This is one of those songs that rewards repeat listening, and one of those albums that just keeps on giving years and years, decades later. So check it out. Let me know if you do. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of this, whether I'm wrong for ranking it as high as 16 and whether it should be closer to number 1 or whether you think I'm even wrong there and it should be all the way towards the end of the list. But anyways, enjoy it. Check it out. Stay safe, y'all. And thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.